All right, so we are going to go over these two homework problems from yesterday. I think there's a little confusion on interval notation and the graphing because we didn't get to go over it. So if you need help, watch this video, try watching it again. I'll go over these two problems and then we can talk about them once I'm back. All right, so we're going to start with number 1. Solve the inequality for x. So this is what we went over on Tuesday. We started doing compound linear inequalities. So first off, I want to solve. I know this is an OR problem, so I'm just going to start on the left, okay? I'm going to go through this kind of quickly, just the solving, because you've seen this, and you can copy it down as you go or correct your work. I'm going to add 2 to both sides. That gives me 9x is less than or equal to negative 36. Now I got to divide by 9 on both sides, so I am left with x is less than or equal to 4. I always want to keep my OR in there. And then on this last one, not too bad, I subtract 9 on both sides, so I'm left with x is greater than or equal to 0. So I'm just going to copy that down below because I know this really is my answer. Now I know it's my answer because I have x alone and x alone, and I just have numbers left over. Now the weird part is that interval notation, so pay close attention to what I'm about to say. First off, I want to start by graphing. Before you do interval notation, it tends to be easiest for you to actually set up the graph first. So maybe, drag your numbers down and take a look at them. Now, on a graph, we have 2 options. We have closed circles and open circles. Closed circles are for something that has an equal sign. So something that is included. So I'll write them less than or equal to or greater than or equal to. An open circle would be for something else, right? Just less than or just greater than. So here you look at each inequality separately. So I'm going to start with x is less than or equal to negative 4. Well, if it includes it and it's equal to, then that means I am going to put a closed circle on negative 4. Now my arrow is pointing this way to the left, so I draw an arrow pointing to the left. Now I want to do my other inequality, and it looks like, again, okay, I'm at 0 and I have a closed circle, so I plot my circle down. And then it looks like my arrow is moving to the left, greater than. So it's bigger than, it's moving to the right. And there we go. We got 2 different lines graphed, right? So this is good. This is part of our answer. It says to graph and write. So I graphed my answer, and now I need to write this in interval notation. Interval notation has either one of 2 things. It has parentheses or brackets. Okay, so brackets look a little stricter. They're like harsher brackets, right? Harsher parentheses, sorry. So what it is parentheses go with open circles and brackets go with closed circles. So anytime you see a closed circle, you put a bracket. Anytime you see an open circle, you put parentheses. Another thing is we have negative infinity all the way on the left here, which means it's all the way. Like non-existent, the biggest number or the smallest number. And then we have infinity all the way on the right here. The video hopefully showed you that a little bit. So what you want to do is look from left to right. So starting over here, moving all the way here. And you want to look at the numbers that it covers. Now infinities always have parentheses, no matter what. So I'm going to start with a parenthesis because I know it looks like I start with an arrow. I start all the way at negative infinity. And then I use a comma. This is just the structure of interval notation. And then it looks like I stop right here because there's nothing in between here. So I stop at negative 4, and it's a closed circle, so I put brackets. Now in the video you should have seen there's something called a union that we use to connect 2 different interval notations. So if you have to use more than one, you put a U in the middle. Now it looks like I pick back up at this 0, and 0 has a closed circle, so I put a bracket. I use another comma to separate my numbers, and it looks like I never stop. So I end at infinity, and infinity always has parentheses. So this right here, this would be my answer in interval notation. So you should get all this written down. I will post this on Schoology. You should get all this written down and remember those concepts about the open and closed circles. Now let's try number 2, an AND problem. So number 2, like I just said, is an AND problem. We're going to start by solving. I'm going to go real quick. First, on the left, I'm going to subtract 8. So I get 2k is less than, what do we have here? Let's use our calculator. 22 minus 8, 14. Okay, good. And then we divide by 2, divide by 2. K is less than 7. Put my AND in the middle. Now I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides. I get 7k is greater than or equal to negative 21. Divide by 7 on both sides, so k is greater than or equal to negative 3. This, again, is a great place to be. I've solved my inequality. So what I'm going to do is drag that down with me because now I want to graph. And luckily they give you a spot to graph here. So if I'm going to graph, again, open circle means if it's not included, there's no equal sign, and closed circle is when there is an equal sign. Let's start with the left side. Now in this case, they say, okay, I'm at 7. Open circle, but it looks like I'm going to the left, right? I'm going all the way to the left, so I plot that. Now I'm going to use a different color for this other one, and I'm going to go to -3, but what type of circle? Well, it's included, so I'm going to use a closed circle. But this one is moving to the right, so my arrow goes this way. Now here's the difficult part. This is not technically my final graph. I cannot leave this as my answer, which I think we weren't able to go through this, so this was a little confusing and you didn't see this in the video. But I don't want arrows here. An and problem is always going to mean both of them have to be true at the same time. But look at the colors. I have blue and purple, right? The only time where both of those are true is in the middle there. On the outside, there's only purple, right? And on the right side, on the outside, there's only blue. So we can't have those. So what I do instead is I actually have to shade the middle of this graph and say, okay, where do those colors overlap, and get rid of those arrows. So what you should write for yourself right now is on an and problems. So and problems are overlap. So overlap means no arrows. All right, so see how an or problem has a gap in the middle and it uses a union to describe it. The and problem does not have that. It's an overlap, okay? So let's let's discover how this would look in interval notation. What's that gonna look like? Well, the negative infinity and infinity don't seem to be covered because there's no arrows. So it looks like I start at -3 with brackets, right? Because it's a closed circle. And then I end all the way here at 7 with an open circle. So that would be my answer in interval notation. And look at how different those two answers look. One of them has a U with 2 different intervals because there's a gap. One of them does not. Okay, so this is kind of a lot to take in. I realize that. But do your best to now try the notes. You should correct this homework. You can resubmit it if you use this work. Take these notes and then make sure that you are trying those notes and checking the answer key. Okay, the answer key has all the answers there for you to make sure you're getting them right. And if you're not, email me questions, go to Math Tutoring, and we'll continue to cover this once I am back in the classroom. All right, so good luck. Email with any questions you've got.